Okay guys, last problem. We have a cosine 5a and a cosine 7a, so that's going to use those cosine plus cosine. And the cosine plus cosine was 2 cosine a plus b cosine a minus b. That's a plus b over 2, a minus b over 2. So that's the identity, so we're just going to go for it. So we have a 5a and a 7a. So that'll give us 12. We can't read that very well. That's 2 cosine 12a over 2, which is 2 cosine 6a. And cosine, if you subtract them, you get negative 2. Negative 2a over 2, which gives you just a positive a, because that negative doesn't matter with cosine, with that identity about that. Remember, cosine negative theta is cosine theta. Okay, so we end up with 2 cosine 6a and cosine a equals 0. So we can just immediately set those equal to 0, and we get cosine 6a equals 0. So now, okay, here's the deal. You are going to have to do this between 0 and pi over 2. But you've got to go a little further because you've got to divide everything by 6, right? So just go a little ways. Keep going around the circle. You'll see what I mean. So the first time it equals 0 is at pi over 2, and then it equals 0 again at 3 pi over 2. And don't worry about this yet, about the possible values of a, because again, we're finding 6a. So then I just went a few more. I said, oh, the next time pi over 2, it would be 5 pi over 2, and then it would be 7 pi over 2, and then it would be 9 pi over 2. Then you have to divide to get a. So you take the first one, and 6a equals pi over 12. Pi over 2. And then if you divide by 6, you get pi over 12. And pi over 12 is in the domain. Is in the possible ranges of what x could be, or a could be. So a is pi over 12 is one choice. The next one, 3 pi over 2, would become 3 pi over 12 or pi over 4. And pi over 4 is between 0 and pi over 2, so that one works. And then the next one I get is 5 pi over 2, but that would be 5 pi over 12. And that's still in the domain 0 to pi over 2, so that one works. And then I went to 7 pi over 2, which would be 7 pi over 12, which is past pi over 2. So I don't use these. And I just can't think of it ahead of time, so I just do it and then stop when I get to the 3. So that was the cosine 6a side. And then the cosine a equals 0 would be at pi over 2, just one time. So you're at pi over 12, pi over 4, 5 pi over 12, and pi over 2. So that was the answer to number 12.